So, as you guys know, I have a podcast. The podcast is called the Infinite Wanderer Podcast. And I've been thinking for a while about changing things up to doing one live show a week instead of recording the podcasts. And I really like the idea of this format because I get to interact with you guys. I get to see your comments when I'm recording it through Audacity or whatever um, thing that I'm recording it through. I obviously can't see your comments because it's not live. So today is going to be the first episode of what I'm calling Soul Talk Radio. And today's episode, we're going to talk about pushing past fear and what that looks like. So, first of all, there's really never a time when I'm about to do something worthwhile that I'm not sitting in a little bit of fear, whether it's a little bit or a lot of fear. And even going live this morning, there was fear around this. I've known that I've wanted to do this like live show format for a while. And I actually purchased there's this software that I'm using to be able to stream to Facebook and YouTube. It's called StreamYard. I downloaded it last week. I actually got on here getting ready to teach the live last week, and then I just didn't do it. I think partially because I just didn't feel prepared. I like to have like a little bit of notes in front of me to know what I'm talking about during the episode. But it was also just fear. Fear kind of hit me, and I thought, this is different. This is new. Going live is different. It's a much different experience than just recording something and then being able to edit it and present it to the world. So here I am, just like our episode today is talking about, pushing past fear and just doing it anyways. I just got goosebumps. Fear is always going to be present in our lives. The unfortunate thing is that most of the time, our fearful thoughts are just simply programmed thought patterns that were created, during childhood, the way our parents spoke to us, which can create our inner monologue. It's so many different things that are creating that fearful voice that's telling you, I'm not good enough to do this. I can't do that. That's too scary. Whatever it is, whatever that monologue is that's going on inside of your head, right? And it's unfortunate, but it is present. But I think the main thing that really helped me was first to realize that voice is false most of the time. Um, oh my God, 99% of the time that voice is false. It's like our annoying, judgmental little roommate that lives in our heads, that's constantly telling you you're not good enough to do that, or who's going to listen to you, that sort of thing. Who are you to do that? All of those really horrible things that we say to ourselves, which we wouldn't say to our worst enemy, yet we say them to ourselves all the time. So the first step, the first hurdle that I had to surpass to push past fear, and I'm still doing it every single day. Every time I do something new, I'm still working through the motions, pushing past those hurdles, right? But the first one for me was changing my mindset around fear, realizing that those voices in my head are false. And quite frankly, I will speak back to whatever monologue is going on. And I'll say stuff like, no, we're not doing that right now. No, like it's the second that fearful monologue starts coming, I'll try and become conscious and aware that that's happening, that I'm going down the negative judgmental train tracks, right? And I'll say to myself, like, no, we're not doing that. That's not true. You're fabulous. And I start like telling myself affirmations, right? That's another one of my tools in my little toolbox for pushing past fear. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. Another great tip and tool in my toolbox, and this feeds into, the changing your mindset thing, is practicing gratitude. I this is going to go into kind of another topic, but the second I established a morning routine, so I get up every day. I'm sorry, not every day, probably 99% of the time. I mean, obviously, there's some days I sleep in, and that is healthy and part of the process. But most days I get up and I write in my gratitude journal. I write affirmations. I script out my dream life and what that would look like. What else do I do? Stretch, meditation, yoga. I drink my coffee. Sometimes I'll do a chanting meditation. I walk my dog. I just be present with my dog. All of those things have completely transformed my life, if I'm being honest. But one of the main things in that routine has been practicing gratitude. That practicing gratitude and also like writing out positive affirmations and stuff has, I think, been one of the main catalysts to me changing my mindset, because I'm constantly challenging those thoughts that come up, those really negative, judgmental thoughts that come up. I become very inquisitive with myself. Like the second a negative thought comes up that says something like, "You're not good enough," I will literally take out my journal and I'll write down the negative thought. And then I'll say, but I'll ask myself something like, "But is that true?" And a lot of times, most of the time, I can write a paragraph of why that's not true, that I am worthy, I am enough, I am knowledgeable enough to do this, I am confident enough to do this, all of those things that my mind was telling me I'm not good enough to do. So, that again is my first tip for beginning to push past fear and reach for the things that you want. The things that you want are so worthwhile, but you have to push past that like mountain that's in your way, fear and self-judgment, in order to get to where you want to be, whatever that is. Whether it's writing a book, starting a podcast, starting your own business, um, it could just simply be going to a social event, whatever it is. It's normally the first mountain is your own thoughts. That reminds me of that book. I think it's called The Mountain Is You. Fabulous book. And she just talks about how you are your biggest hurdle. You are the one who's standing in your own way. Like we all are. We're all, gosh, we're all just standing in our own way, creating these negative, judgmental thoughts about ourselves, which half the time are not true. So I talked about gratitude. Another practice that I do, which I talked about a little bit, is a journaling practice, or creating affirmations, which I mentioned in the beginning. So one thing that I do as far as affirmations is I will create what's called a how affirmation. So instead of wording it like I am enough or I am worthy, whatever, I'll word it as a question. And then the second you word it as a question, your brain starts to come up with the answers. So instead of, let me think of one. Instead of I am enough, I'll word it, how did I become so worthy? That sort of thing. And then my brain will start to come up with the answers. So I think that helps to, because I think a lot of people, they have a roadblock with affirmations, that the second they say them, their body and their mind, a lot of times thinks that's not true. So it doesn't really work for them. But I think if you frame it as a question, then your brain starts to go into solve mode and comes up with answers to that question, which is really cool. So moving forward this week, I want you to do me a favor. When you find yourself sitting in fear around something that you want to do, and actually there's another thing I want to say before I go into that. If you are excited about something and also fearful about that same thing, I have to tell you, that is probably the thing that you need to be pursuing. If it makes you so excited to think about it, but yet when it comes to implementing it, there's fear, there's hesitation, there's anxiety. That fear, that hesitation, that anxiety isn't telling you not to do it. It's just simply a side effect of chasing the things that we want. Um, all of us, every single creator out there, every single person who has pursued something that they wanted to pursue, pursued a dream, whatever it was, has had to continually and perpetually push past fear all the time. All the time. I don't think it ever goes away. I'm constantly pushing past feelings of, inadequacy or feeling like I'm not good enough, whatever it is. I'm constantly having to work through those things. I think that it does get a little bit easier over time to work through those things because now I have the tools. I know what steps to take when those feelings come up. However, the fear is still always there. So, moving forward, this week, if something comes up, I really want you to try and work through these steps. The first step being practicing gratitude, working to notice when your mind is going into those negative thought patterns. I'm not good enough to do this, whatever it is, and challenging those thoughts. Yeah, but is that true? Most of the time it's not. Also using a journaling practice, possibly using affirmations. Just journaling in general is so helpful. Just writing down the reasons why you're fearful, and then possibly also writing down the reasons why you're excited to do those things. And yeah, just let me know how it goes. And I'm not going to keep this episode too long. I think every week we'll probably do, like 10, 20 minutes talking about different topics. But again, this was the first episode of Soul Talk Radio. And I will be taking the audio from this episode and posting it to any podcasts, like Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, all that stuff, and YouTube. I'll post the video of this to YouTube. So if you'd like more information on a coaching session with me, where I'll teach you how to meditate, I'll teach you how to cultivate a morning routine, as well as dive into shadow work and that sort of stuff, or if you want to set up a free discovery call, you can email me at megan@shifttowellness.org, MEGAN@shifttowellness.org. And I will see you guys next week. I hope that you enjoyed this. Please leave me a comment and a follow to follow along for next week's episode. And if there's any topics that you want to hear about, you can email me or comment here. But it was lovely connecting with you all. And thank you so much for joining me. And I will see you again next week.